Good day, viewers. I am 𝐁𝐧𝐽𝐻, your host for this special series of HJ Testimonies, Living the Legacy. In this special series, we engage in meaningful conversations with esteemed guests from diverse backgrounds, exploring their life journeys, values, and legacies they continue to build. For this first episode, we are honored to welcome Mrs. Annie Andanar. She dedicated 8 years of her career as a legislative specialist at the House of Representatives of the Philippines, serving as the director of the Committee Affairs Bureau during the speakership of Ramon Mitra. Currently, she serves as a special assistant consultant to the former president and incumbent 2nd District Representative of Pampanga, Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo, actively supporting both local and international engagements as well as her various pieces of legislation. She is a champion of family welfare, an interfaith advocate, and a freedom fighter. And now, she continues to make a difference as a peace ambassadress and as a senior advisor of the Universal Peace Federation Philippines. And now, let's explore the story of Mrs. Annie Andanar. Welcome, ma'am. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation to be here in this HJ Testimonies. How do you feel?
Good morning. I'm feeling good. Yeah, and it's always nice to reach out to our viewers and peace advocates.
So now we are going to hear your story.
I did a few notes. That's why I have this beside me, because I don't want to miss salient points, especially in my early childhood and years of the family. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. So speaking of early childhood, can you describe to us how your childhood was like?
My family is an ordinary Filipino family. I was born to a father who had day job and a mother who as well was a government employee, but at the same time had other responsibilities of being parent because my mother was working, studying for her postgraduate degree and teaching in the university near the government service insurance system where she worked. It was my father, I recall, who would go to the market, who would go to the grocery, who would be in my parent-teacher conferences, because my mother was not only busy in her career, but she had this particular difficulty with crowds. So I recall that even during Sunday masses, we were outside of the Santo Domingo Church, this big church where we go every Sunday morning. My family was deeply spiritual. My father and my mother prioritized our Sunday mass obligation. And this was at 8 o'clock in the morning of Sundays. But I recall that my parents and my sisters and I were at the back pews of the church or even outside because she couldn't breathe. So she was both claustrophobic and had difficulty among crowds. So that was regular Sunday Mass onto lunch after family lunch after Mass. My siblings were both girls. I'm the eldest, and then I had two other siblings who wore the same dresses like me. No, it was supposed to be white with veils in church.
Oh.
Because both mother and father instilled in us very early on that faith played a big role in our lives as a family. Those were the moments I can most recall. And of course, we were enrolled in a Catholic school. not run by nuns, but by they call it, they were lay educators, then called the Institución Teresiana. We had Spanish teachers at that time, but they were lay. They were not religious. Basically that.
You've mentioned that you are the eldest of the family.
Yes.
So, how do you describe your relationship towards your parents and your siblings?
My parents were strict and conservative, but we had joyous times together as a family, and that was Sunday. So Sunday was family day, and my siblings and I had to go through school in another conservative, very Catholic upbringing. But we understood that it was part of the process of their parenting and the process of growing as a family. And so I did mention about the white dress and the veil on Sundays and the catechism in school. I clearly remember having to memorize 30 pages to around 40 pages of catechism. And we also had Spanish classes as early as kinder and prep in a small school. So it was a very personal setting where, for example, the Aquinos and the Marcoses went to the school. So we knew each other because it was a small school. We knew who were sisters, and the preschool of Institución Teresiana was where now our incumbent president studied. He likes to say, when I meet him, that I was your little boy in prep, using the uniform of shorts and our checkered top. It was fun-filled, but we had to adhere to a strict schedule of being in school, waking up very early because all three of us, had to go board the school bus and take our lunch in school. In the school bus, we were maybe around 20, but we were picked up the earliest because we lived so far away from the school. And at that time, there was not much commuting until I was taught by my parents to commute. And also, in turn, I had to teach my classmates how to commute from school to their residences whenever there was no available driver to pick them up.
I can also relate with the church memories that you have. We go to church every Sundays. When we were young, we would always go to church at 9 because my parents, they were one of the choir members. At a young age, we were taught to, how to pray, how to do the rosary and all.
You mentioned the family rosary. We always had it at 8 o'clock in the evening, both parents and my siblings. But later on in life, when she was retired already, I'm referring to my mother. She became a choir member and a very active officer of the Catholic Women's League of the Philippines, and that's where she devoted most of her time when she was retired already, up to the time she passed away.
Yeah, my sister was once a CWL member.
Yes. Yeah, they're blue and white uniform. Yes.
So you mentioned that you have joyous moments when you were a kid. So what was the most memorable moment that you had?
I would recall this was the younger years because my father passed away when I was 9 years old of cancer of the pancreas. At that time, there was no known cure, and he lived from the time of diagnosis. It started with a stomach ache, which was diagnosed as peptic ulcers in October, November of 1968, but he passed away in 1969. So the joyous years were the years when, during summer vacation, he would bring us back to the province to integrate with our relatives in the province and to learn the dialect. That's why I speak, I read, and I sing Ilocano.
Oh.
My father was from the north as well as my mother. So we had Pangasinan to go to, and further up north in La Union and Nueva Vizcaya. And that's why I learned to bathe in the streams in our province, and also to eat and appreciate, and later on learn how to cook Ilocano delicacies. I also enjoyed the fiestas in May when we would go to the province, and my mother and father during those times would dance the tango. They were both very good dancers and both very good singers. And so at that time, it was an event that we as children and they as parents, as well as our relatives, looked forward to, so that we can come together as a family. Of course, later on, it became far in between, when my father passed away in 1969. But I would still go together with my siblings whenever we can, but especially on both joyful occasions of weddings in the province, or the sorrowful ones of wakes and burials of relatives. My father and mother were deeply entrenched in their families. And because even if at that time it was 5 hours from our place in Manila to the province, we also enjoyed those road trips when we were younger, as children of these two very dedicated parents and relatives who would often help our relatives in the province.
I think I can relate to Andanar, because even though I live in Bohol,
Yes.
but I grew up in a city.
Oh,
so
yeah.
um,
Pagbilaran.
yes.
Yes.
So I speak Bisaya.
Mm.
But every summer we go to my mother's place, which is in Bilar. It's
Mm.
closer in Chocolate Hills.
Yes,
You know, the
yes,
Carmen.
yes.
We go there, and then until we grow up, we can only go whenever we can.
Yeah.
So I miss those feelings too.
Yes, this was
Yeah, very nostalgic.
yes. I looked at those childhood years with fondness up to the time I was in high school, because of the integration with the family and the new experiences and the new learnings. Always,
Oh,
each time that you go to the province,
true.
and of course the fresh air, the vegetables picked from the backyard or even from the farm, where we were led to by our relatives, and the returning relatives at that time, whom we would meet again when they'd come home from either the US and elsewhere in the world, because our family also and our town had many pioneering nurses at the time, and members of the US Navy. That was their main livelihood. They were either nurses or Navy officers, US Army officers, or even soldiers in the Philippines. And so we had a mix of both local returning relatives, or now what we call the balikbayans.
So you mentioned earlier that your parents are strict in faith and they're also family oriented.
Yes.
So aside from that, what are the other values or traditions that are deeply rooted in your family?
Oh, the spirit of bayanihan. I have this story about our neighbors and relatives in the province when we did not have fences. The fences or the divisions in the lot would be the sampayan in our vernacular. Clothesline in between houses. But there was really very tight involvement in the community among neighbors. You know that when a neighbor or a relative is sick, we go to them. When a relative or a neighbor gives birth, then my grandparents or my aunties and uncles would cook for them. Tinola, our native chicken dish, which had broth and papaya and these leaves, silly leaves.
Yeah.
So even the sense of being community and even the sense of security is rooted in the spirit of helping those who need the help, whether it's actual presence, shared food, and sharing experiences, and a consultative atmosphere where neighbors and relatives and almost family, even friends, as well as officials in the barrio before, now our barangay, come together to discuss issues and to resolve them. There was very little time to go to the lawyers to file cases because the community and our families help resolve the many issues on the ground at the community level among neighbors and among relatives. So I miss that. The Filipinos were very consultative, obedient, law-abiding, and shared many of what they had, what they have with neighbors, relatives, and friends.
Yeah, that is something also that I missed in Bohol because growing up I can see that in our place.
Yes.
But when I transferred here like a year ago, like I can see like in this community, like I don't know this person, I don't
Yeah.
know this person.
Yeah.
Who is this person?
It has become to each his own.
Yeah.
It's a sad statement, but that is why I also appreciate the community that is the Universal Peace Federation. And that attracted my husband and I when we were first coming over to participate in events upon the invitation of many of the UPF elders in the Philippines. Yeah.
So speaking of your husband, ma'am, how did you meet your husband?
Oh, I met my husband in politics already because I was then working in an NGO called Social Development Index. It was an NGO on alternative lifestyles, alternative education, and they were trying to instill change in society. And after that, I did mention that I came from I was a freedom fighter, and therefore I came from the underground movement during that time from 1978 to 1982. And then in 1982, I met my husband, Attorney Wency Andanar, because they founded the PDP, Partido Democrático Pilipino in Mindanao. He's one of the core members of then the late City Mayor of Cagayan de Oro and former Senate President Aquilino Pimentel Jr., and many of those who pioneered in the political party post martial law. That's where we met because we were from Luzon, they were from Mindanao, but we would have many meetings when we were doing the constitution and the party program of the PDP at that time, and participating in the many activities of the orientation seminars of the PDP Party Institute. It was the first political party which had a political institute, and my husband was the head of the education committee at that time.
Okay, so you mentioned you are from Luzon and your husband is from Mindanao.
Yes.
Would like to ask if there are any cultural differences that has hindered you in your relationship with your husband?
Not really. He was from the province, but studied in Ateneo de Manila.
Mm,
But I was Manila born,
mm-mm,
and essentially my taste was really Manila and nice things. My
mm-mm,
father worked with a brokerage company, the Delgado
mm-mm,
brokerage, which is still existing up to now. And so he had access to many imported goods,
mm-mm,
shoes and bags and quality clothing. My husband was island born.
mm-mm.
He's from Siargao Island,
Yeah.
actually. But what brought us together is not only the vision, the simplicity of both the province
Mm-mm,
and the metropolis. While living in the metropolis, his being island born also taught me to appreciate the nuances
mm-mm,
of being from the islands and my being from the province, but born, bred, and reared in Manila. There was not much cultural differences. Of course, I had to learn
to speak.
gamay, the kasulti,
Mm-mm,
gamay, Bisaya. But Siargao noon is different.
mm-mm,
Siargao noon is like Bolanon,
mm-mm,
the Marajao, Carajao. So there were certain nuances, but not that we cannot agree upon. Also, maybe because of the 12-year difference, he
mm,
was both a brother, a father, and we were friends first. In the
mm-mm,
political party, we were friends and comrades
mm-mm.
first before we knew that we wanted to have a life together.
Wow, that was 12 years apart.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that was
Both born on the year of the pig.
oh,
19 He was born in December 2, 1947, and I was born March 30, 1959. It
mm,
was an almost perfect fit, yeah, of in our politics, in our spirituality, because we both came from very Catholic upbringing. He spent, in fact, 4 years in the seminary in
mm-mm,
Butuan,
mm,
and so we understood that our faith is the linchpin of our lives, even then. And of course, fast forward in 2002, we reverted to Islam.
mm-mm,
So, from a very strict Catholic upbringing and with values and beliefs and tradition,
mm-mm.
we reverted to Islam. It was a conscious choice, a deliberate decision to become Muslims in 2002.
Mm-mm.
And our journey brought us from China to visit the tomb of the prophets
Mm-mm.
once when we were attending a conference and visited shaman,
Mm-mm.
to the journey to a counterterrorism seminar
Mm-mm.
in Jerusalem,
Mm-mm.
where we went to the religious sites in Israel. And then a year after, we became Muslims.
So, what do you like the most with your husband, ma'am?
Oh, my husband was very funny. He
Mm-hmm.
had this sense of humor, but more than that, he, Attorney Wensi, was an achiever. He was a peacemaker, and he practiced our faith. When we were Catholics, we would go to Mass almost every day in the mornings, not only on Sundays, but when we became Muslims, we had to follow the 5 pillars of Islam. And so we were praying 5 times a day as much as we can. We were fasting during the month of Ramadan. We believe that there is only one God. We're lucky and privileged to have had the opportunity to go to the Hajj 1 year after we reverted to Islam.
Oh,
We are indeed practicing Muslims.
you really love your husband very much.
Yeah.
So I can see
In fact,
that.
that was I think that was I was saying April 26, because that is the death anniversary of death month anniversary of my husband. And to now, I really, really feel I truly miss him. Okay. Yeah. We're not soulmates. We're twin souls. There's a difference. And we really, really enjoyed the good times as well as the bad times. The challenges of marriage, of having a multi-faith. There's a term that we use. Let me refer to my notes. I think we are a blended family.
Oh.
I was the
That's
second
right.
wife of Attorney Wency. We have this story that when I am asked how many children I had, he would look at me and I've had to answer, we have 10 children. But really, he had 5 and we were also 5. So he likes to say, I have 10 children, all in all. We're multi-faith, we're multicultural, we're multi-party, because we allow them to have their own choices, even in politics. We may argue a lot and we can have different preferences or choices, but we practiced being family. And there were very many intimate moments early on. And this is exemplified by the name of our youngest son. His name is Regis Martin Wenceslao Andanar. He had 3 names, difficult because his father had not introduced us to his first family. Many of them live in Melbourne. And so he said, just in case he leaves, he passes, before he's able to introduce his youngest son to the other siblings, he referred to the Regis Martin Andanar. Regis is the second name of Vinci Regis Javier, his youngest son in Melbourne. Martin is the third name of Jose Ruperto Martin Andanar, the former communications secretary of President Duterte. And Wenceslao is the second name of his eldest brother, Edgardo Wenceslao. So that's the history of his name. And that's what it is in our family.
I wonder how your son was like when he was young, having to write 3 names.
Yes,
And then
he was
Andanar is
mischievous and he would always write Regis.
yes.
Even in college, I remember he would sometimes not put the Martin and the Wenceslao because he was afraid he will be made to explain why he had such a long name. And when he was in college already, Kuya Mart was already a broadcaster. And so he was known to many already as Martin Andanar. So that there was one time he wrote an article for Young Blood in Inquirer. And Martin was already doing his newscast and his early morning show. And when he entered the newsroom, they told him, "Pare, meron ka na palang anak. You already have a son." And he says, "Huh? We saw this article in Inquirer, and it was a beautiful story because it was, I think, the boy who achieved." And he says, "No, I don't have a son. I have a son, but he's not yet that old. He's my brother." And that's how that's the references. So with his family name, his eldest sister, attorney Andanar's Leah Andanar Yu, was Binibining Pilipinas International 1989. So there was another Ate Leah, and then of course his other siblings, Kuya Martin, Kuya Ed, who was president of the Mountaineering Society of UP Los Baños and is an accomplished businessman in Melbourne, and of course also my own daughters. So he has to look up to 9 siblings, kuyas and ates, in this blended family. He is the most sociable. He is the type of a child who, after dinner in a restaurant, would go to the security guard, go to the cashier, talk to the waiters.
He just talks to
He
anyone.
just to them. It was perfectly normal for him to blend with a group, but he particularly enjoyed having to talk or interact with elder people.
Hearing how amazing your children are, especially your youngest.
Yeah, they're all accomplished, from the eldest to the youngest. They're very, very good children, accomplished, well educated, but very family oriented. In fact, I have another daughter, my own daughter, who is in Melbourne, also relocated to Melbourne, actually during the pandemic for studies. Before the lockdown, they were lucky they were able to acquire student visas for all of them, because she was going to take her master's studies in Melbourne as well as the husband. But they opted to go to Melbourne for the family. And her eldest was already 18 years old when her second child was born in Melbourne. So the eldest child, Sophia, was 18 at the time, and she gave birth after 17 plus years of not being able to bear a child here. And then just very recently, we have our 1-year-old, turning 1-year-old in May, baby boy, Matthew, also in Melbourne. And so they're there and they come together. I went for a big blended family reunion 2 years ago, and that's where we all met, except for 1 or 2 siblings who were not in Melbourne at that time. Yeah. So we have family all over the world. So they are also good citizens of the world. Atelia was a appointed cultural ambassador also in Melbourne. She is very well studied, very well educated, and was a pioneer in ANC and its predecessor broadcasting company, Sky Cable.
Oh, yeah.
So she was news anchor. Many of them are in media and education. The other sister in Melbourne is the international merchandiser of Cotton On. And the youngest is a Vinci, we refer to as a rock star musician, very culturally entrenched. Youngest boy there. he was born in 1988, and then our firstborn son with attorney Andanar was born in 1989. He was a teacher. I thought he chose education as a course because he just couldn't think of another course which he preferred, and I was thinking, oh, maybe this boy is going to shift courses. Apparently, he wanted to become a teacher. Really, vocation for him. And he worked for 10 years, 2 boys' schools, exclusive boys' schools, and only after the pandemic did he transfer because he already had a back problem because of long hours of studying. And now he's also in government service and he's enjoying it. He works in the House of Representatives, like my eldest granddaughter, who is also in the House of Representatives.
You're having such wonderful children. I know you raised them very well with your husband.
And the mother of
Yes.
Martin and
Yeah.
Leah. Yes, we must have done something good
Yes.
by being able to raise good children, accomplished, but very humble, and yet good citizens of the world as well, serving those who most need it. And I'd like to think that even the spiritual upbringing was guided because they live their lives according to their faiths.
So, what was the most unforgettable struggle that you shared with your husband?
The most unforgettable struggle was when he was diagnosed for cancer. Attorney Andanar does not like the idea of consulting doctors. And so when he was diagnosed in 2019 for cancer of the liver, we could not figure out where the illness originated, what caused it. But we had to face it with much struggle because he did not want any form of chemotherapy.
Medication.
Yes. Not only medication, but chemotherapy or the medical intervention. So he said, if my destiny is to live only up to this point where God says, come home, then that's my destiny. And so it took some time before we were able to convince him to have a second opinion in Fuda Cancer Hospital in Guangzhou, China. But then again, fate or maybe God did not destine him to go. First, we had the Taal volcano eruption, so we had to move the appointment to another date. And then it was Chinese New Year, and the hospital had said, can we move it to another date? But by the time we had moved it to another date, we couldn't leave anymore because of the COVID.
Oh.
So he was hospitalized after. Of course, I was warned that it would be painful because he had growth in both lobes. He had a tumor in both the right and left lobes of the liver, but God is good. We had a Muslim healer. We had the best practitioners in the Philippines, and he passed away without pain on the 10th day of Ramadan. After we were able to pray, I was fasting, and while I was fasting and he was already in the bed with his IVs, we were still able to pray. I put my mat beside him and we were able to pray and praise Allah for the wonderful gifts, the wonderful times together, and that His will be done. And he escaped from all of us because he knew that the children were coming and everyone was coming that morning, but he didn't wait anymore I just turned my back, went to the toilet. When I came out, I told the nurse, it's a miracle. He didn't say, he wasn't in pain at all. Then the room became full already of doctors and nurses because apparently it was just one long, deep breath and he was gone. And the doctor looked at me and I said, yeah, I signed a do not resuscitate form, but please do what you can. Non-invasive anymore, maybe just the blowing. So they still tried, but after 30, 45 minutes, and I had called my children and they said they were 5 minutes away. And I told them, actually, we're doing resuscitation, so please come. So when they saw him, he had already passed. So that's the way he wanted it. That was God's will, that he pass away in a peaceful manner, surrounded by family.
I think that was an amazing moment for your husband.
Yes, but that was really challenging because the first time he was in the hospital in November 2019, we both had to sign a waiver from the hospital because he wanted to go to the UPF event in Cambodia. That was the Asia Pacific Summit in Cambodia. And so we went in November of 2019. He had specifically requested that he be allowed to go to Cambodia and to attend the World Summit, the Asia Pacific Summit, and the 50th anniversary of his batch, of his fraternity in UP, the Upsilon Sigma Phi. And he was able to do it, both of them. Yeah.
I think that was his final request.
Yes, yes, yes.
I think he had a great life.
Yes, I think overall it was a very meaningful life, and he was able to do what he had set out to do and what God had wanted or willed for him to do in his lifetime.
The next questions will be more on your parental strategies. You've mentioned earlier that you have 10 kids and all of them are achievers.
Yes.
So how do you instill values to your children?
First is really being able to instill in them, even during their first years, that God is the center of our lives. He is a reason for being, and that because if we are commanded to love Him, then we are also commanded to love our neighbors. And based on that, our lives had to focus on being able to be present during the times that we are needed by our children. I was working, but the parent-teacher conferences would always take precedence over busy schedules. Also, I was a breastfeeding mom, so I brought my children to the office. They saw how we work, or when they were even babies, I would bring my bottles with me so that I can express. So that was a priority for me. Breastfeeding, I even attended the conference in Singapore for 4 days, but was fully breastfeeding my daughter when I was in the House of Representatives, and my mom would thaw the milk and give her the milk while I was away. So, and because I had very strict parents, I thought that I would want to be less of a tiger mom, but I think I was also. I was. I'm a very controlling person, so I had to also warn myself. And because of the many times we were away, I and my husband were away, my children also suffered the absence of sometimes one parent or both parents. But we also made it a point to spend real quality time with them. So I remember when my husband was GILG undersecretary, in places where we would ride the car, we had two cars because the family was in the other car, and we were in the other car, and he would weave into his busy schedule, time for the family to go to the beach if there was a beach, time to meet with his regional officials in the field. So the children are very well integrated. Even with the first family, when he was governor of Surigao del Norte, he had residence in Surigao and he had a residence in Cagayan de Oro where they were studying. If there was someone who understood work-life balance, it was Attorney Andanar. And that he also tried to instill in me. Because he was a morning person and I was a night person, and our world was in politics. So there was really, really so much time devoted to work. But he would always warn us that if we can bring the children, then we'll bring the children. If we can say no to activities on a Sunday, then we can have the Friday and Saturday working, but Sundays would have to be with children, especially during their birthdays. And so I have a distinct ability to memorize and remember the special occasions in the lives of our children.
Yeah, that's wonderful, ma'am.
Yeah.
So, what was the most rewarding part of parenting to you?
The most rewarding part is seeing how they rear their children as well. From the families in Melbourne to here, they must have learned something good from us, that they are able to parent their children to become good persons and good citizens, practicing their faith, whatever faith, with conviction, leading lives to inspire others. Many of them are servants of God, I should say, and have been successful not only in their personal lives, but also in the communities where they are. And that's most rewarding, hearing stories in the House of Representatives of how my son and my granddaughter behave and are told of what their elders in government service did, and also their being inspiring servants of God and of the people as well, are truly remarkable achievements.
So, when it comes to parenting dynamics in your family, what is your role? Like, are you the one who comforts your kids whenever they're sad, or are you the one who reprimands them, or like
Yeah,
which
I am.
which are you?
I am more the controlling parent, who
Who
whips them
disciplines?
into line. Yeah. But now that they're older, dialogue is more open. Communication lines, also because of technology, are better, because we are able to do video calls, almost every day. The people, I can talk to them in Melbourne. And then just this early morning, I was talking to my son who's celebrating his birthday today in Budapest, Hungary. And I have another daughter in Toronto, so it's another time zone also. But we have managed to come together during times when we need to communicate. And because all of us are verbal, and
Mm.
we come from a very musical family. So everybody sings. In this family, everybody sings. So we all have, Papa had to buy their own microphones. Our children play instruments. The first wife of my husband was a classical pianist and a musician as well. And all of them are truly involved creatively and with great musicality.
I have a request. You said your family is musically oriented, so that also includes you. So, like, are you the instrument player, the singer, or
I sing.
dancer? Oh, you
My
sing.
husband and I sing. And UPF has witnessed this in many instances. Yeah.
If it's okay with you, do you have your favorite song? Like, can you sing a part of it?
Oh, yeah. But I hope tears don't fall again. Ikaw ang bigay ng may kapal, tugon sa aking dasal.
That was beautiful, ma'am.
I don't want my tears to fall anymore. That is a duet that we do
Mm,
all the time. Yeah. Whether we're in an ASEAN conference or in an UPF conference, or
you have such a wonderful voice.
I was a member of the choir,
Oh,
and so was he. He was a
wonder.
member of the Ateneo Glee Club. Yeah.
Mm.
So many of our
You're a
children,
soprano, right?
yeah, many of our children, Secretary Martin sings, plays the piano, Atelia sings also, and um, my boy in the House of Representatives, Regis.
Mm-mm.
They're all very good looking and
Mm.
very successful children. But more than that, we were truly rewarded. We were given children who are good persons and good citizens as well.
So we're going to have more conversation with your career. So you have had a long, distinguished career, and now you are serving the as a consultant for our former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. So what inspired you to pursue your career?
I will preface my answer by saying we used to fight government.
Mm.
We wanted change. So when I had the opportunity to join government in 1984 in the Batasang Pambansa, which is the legislature at that time, during that period when we were under Marcos Sr., but under a parliamentary form, I had the opportunity of being able to interface with politicians and work in the Batasang Pambansa, in the legislature, where policies are crafted and then they become laws of the land. So that I said, if we can make a difference in the policy of the country and hopefully capacitate our own people so that they can elect responsible and committed leaders, then I thought I can make a difference in this world. That's why I decided to work, because I was given that opportunity also as well from 84 to 86. In 86, I had a brief stint with the Ministry of Human Settlements at that time. It was very short. Thereafter, Speaker Mitra recruited me to become the pioneering director of the House of Representatives, because that was the first House of Representatives and Senate after President Cory. That was 87, after the elections of 87.
Were there times when you said to yourself, no, I don't want to do this anymore. And what was that, and how were you able to overcome that kind of struggle that you have in your career?
I resigned in 1992,
Mm-hmm.
but continued to work
Mm-hmm.
in a consulting capacity up to this time. This is what I like to do. I do because I understand the rudiments of lawmaking and also the operations of the executive branch, which is a co-equal branch of our government. Then I don't give up. It's not part of my vocabulary. I am not a person who gives up. I am not a person who regrets, because I believe that there are always solutions to problems, and that whatever I can do in my own capacity, wherever I am, and whatever period in our history, then we should assume that responsibility.
What was the most fulfilling part that you have experienced during the years in your career?
Oh, seeing the fruits of our labor, being able to help craft the rules of the House of Representatives, improve the systems in the committees, and the way the committee secretariat operates within that framework of politicians and bureaucrats in the House of Representatives, and seeing them succeed in their many fields after after we have recruited them and trained them. I'm proud to say I have an ambassador already. I have two justices of the Court of Appeals. We have many successful business persons, and those who worked abroad in the legislature, in Canada, in the United States, many international civil servants. So I thought that we have succeeded in educating them and building their capacities to serve in other professions outside of the legislature.
You are also the senior advisor of the Universal Peace Federation in the Philippines. But before that, you were attending the events of UPF, such as peace rallies, the interreligious meetings, and youth assemblies. What impact do you think these events have had on society?
On society.
Yes.
I work with UPF Philippines, but also with UPF Malaysia. Um, and I have seen how these various events elicit participation among our people, among those who have attended the events. The youth assembly in Iloilo, which we attended, was very, very successful. Unfortunately, I think after that, um, it wasn't continued in that large scale. It inspired us primarily as a couple, as husband and wife, and reaffirmed our beliefs and our conviction that we should strengthen the family as not only the basic unit of society, but as the institution that must be preserved, strengthened, and so that it can serve as an inspiration to the next generation, and so that our society, our communities, and later on the bigger society can benefit from the values, universal human values instilled by the UPF, especially the marriage and family festivals. They are not only celebration, they are occasions to rethink our own values as people, to nurture friendships, and to provide continuity to these programs, which are needed both in the Philippines and in Malaysia. In Malaysia, it's quite different because they're Muslim, but they now are able to introduce new programs and improve the way they operate in an Islamic state. We participated in the Peace Road activity, both in Penang and in Kuala Lumpur, and several loving couples festivals in Malaysia. Here in the Philippines, the Ambassadors for Peace also is an inspiring, but must be strengthened to continue to provide the impetus for more cohesive and more like-minded Filipinos to pursue the path of peace.
So you're already thinking also for the future generation with that
Yes.
kind of mindset.
Yes. Because this society, the Philippines and the world does not belong to us anymore. I mean, my generation, it already belongs to the next generation. So we must bear in mind that our actions of today create an impact on the lives they will lead in the future. So we must be very clear about our vision, collectively pursue the mission of peace building, peace education, strengthening of families, and service to not only our families, our communities, and to society in general.
So now we are already in our almost in our concluding part. So regarding the younger generations, from all those lessons, life experiences that you had, which one would you like to share to the young generation?
Yes, first let me contextualize. The younger generation did not experience the experiences we had. There was a strong family support in my generation. And because we belonged to small schools, we knew one another more. And families were brought into the circle of friends. And now you have families which are broken. You have the lack of support structures, both in the family and in the schools. I cannot help but think that even our traffic exacerbates this kind of a situation because as children before, we had time to play even after school while waiting for the school bus, or you had time to socialize. Now you have to go home right away. You have to beat the traffic. You have to beat the schedule of the train or the buses. There simply is also the lack of time to spend with one another. Also, maybe the downside of technology has also resulted in being more individualistic. Our youth are more individualistic and have very short-term goals, having to be able to work, find employment to help the other siblings, or simply just to live and work so that they satisfy their own goals in their careers. And in fact, later on, think of whatever else the family or the society needs. So you have many obstacles, I must say, for the youth of this generation to become fulfilled with their own needs, to delay gratification, and to work for the common good with the majority population. Our world has become materialistic and individualistic, that we now need to build the support structures again. We need to revisit our values as a people, the bayanihan, coming together, working together, helping one another, so that the dreams and aspirations of our forebears can be achieved. And to provide for avenues where these values can be nurtured. Otherwise, we would also fall prey to the many occasions where our youth have to confront their own depression, their own mental health issues, aside from the other issues in the family and in their work. Still and all, there is an overarching principle or belief or conviction that there is a God who knows our beginning and our end, and whom we must put in the center of our lives. We can never achieve what we hope to achieve if we do not surrender and believe to a higher being who provides and guides us, even in our daily lives. And therefore, we must learn to pray again as individuals, as families, and as a people. Sometimes we overlook it during times of success. We forget to be grateful for our very own existence and for the many blessings that have come our way, whether it is family, parents, children, siblings, our teachers, our friends, our relatives. We must be able to return to that again, to this belief that there is one supreme being who divines our destinies, and that under his guidance we can work and do our best, but that there are many things that only God can do for us.
So, as a woman of faith, what role do faith and purpose play in our daily life? And you mentioned earlier that there are a lot of broken families in our society. So, what should be the role of faith when it comes to marriage?
Faith should be the bedrock of marriage, whether you're Catholic, Christian, Muslim. We have almost the same beliefs, intrinsic to being father, mother, children. And therefore, that's why I said we must learn to pray again.
True.
To build on our faith. And whatever faith you have, we must practice it with all commitment and conviction. We live in a very challenging world. We live with so many internal and external problems, but these problems are also given to us so that we become tenacious, we become faithful to our faith, and to translate it into action with our families and with a bigger society.
True. Action speaks louder than words.
Yep.
You need
Yeah.
to translate it.
But primarily, there must be a God in the center of our lives.
So thank you so much, ma'am,
Mhm.
for giving us your time. So that concludes our HJ Testimonies.
Thank you.
And as a token of appreciation, we don't have much, but we want to give you these wonderful flowers. I know you've seen them already.
Oh, yeah. Wow, wow,
It's come
wow.
through,
Thank
so
you. Yeah.
thank you so much, Mrs. Andanar,
Yeah.
for your time.
Thank you
and for
also
your
so
support.
much for making me relive the good and the beautiful.
So you want to share anything to our viewers?
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to our viewers worldwide. I'd like to show my gratitude to the Universal Peace Federation for the inspiration from Mother Moon, whom I have known and met a few times. I wasn't fortunate enough to meet Father Moon, but believing in her capacity still to inspire and to move the world towards this journey for peace. May you live a longer life, Mother Moon. May we have many more adherents so that we can multiply and be able to build the peace road you so work hard for. I pray for more blessings for the UPF and its allied organizations.
And that ends the first episode of the special series, Leaving the Legacy. Hope you have learned something from the story of Mrs. Andanar, and we encourage you to comment on the comment section to share your thoughts, inspirations, and reflections from today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be glad to see you again.